Hey everybody, this is Sean with Chester Paul Company. Today I want to spend a moment and talk about residential RO, residential reverse osmosis, and specifically efficiency and a little bit of confusion around efficiency versus recovery and kind of what we're looking for when we talk about improving the efficiency of a residential RO. It's also relatively timely to talk about this because I believe by the end of this year we're going to have some new, well, we already have some new standards that we can build residential ROs around efficiency, and I think we're going to have some new partners entering the market that will increase the awareness of residential RO efficiency. So let's get going. ROs, really, residential ROs have not changed since the 80s. And for the last 40 years, very traditional. We're using membrane. You know, people say it's a 5-to-1 ratio. That's up for discussion. 5-to-1 ratio, meaning 5 gallons of concentrate or waste to 1 gallon product or drinking water. And that's up for discussion because you have a lot of variables. You got a shut-off valve that's turning off on tank pressures, which is a big variable, and how much water's in the tank. So you're never operating at the exact same ratio of recovery when you have a pressurized tank. But we'll get into that in a minute. You know, the drought in the West Coast and the lack of storage capacity on the West Coast as well is causing water scarcity and kind of making appliances from irrigation to toilets to shower heads, making us more aware of water efficiency and where we can adapt products to meet more of the 2020 necessities, let's say. So explaining efficiency versus recovery. You hear a lot about ratios, 1-to-1, 5-to-1, 3-to-1. What these are, this is a recovery rating, and a recovery rating is typically done either in a lab or on a test bench. Regardless, it's done without a pressurized tank attached to the system. So in a tankless system, it's a recovery rating that you're concerned with. And with a tank, you're switching over to efficiency. But let's get to the recovery definition. Recovery defined is basically you've got a gallon an hour of product to a gallon an hour of waste or concentrate. That is a 1-to-1 recovery. When you hear 5-to-1, 4-to-1, very common in residential RO, that is open spigot, again, no back pressure, 4 gallons or 5 gallons concentrate to 1 gallon product or drinking water. Efficiency. The efficiency rating is a little more complex, but it's really only more complex on the ratios. At the end of the day, an efficiency rating is with a tank, shut-off valve, and a working system. Total amount of product that ends up in the tank that can be dispensed from your faucet to total amount of water that's run to drain or concentrate. So again, you're still coming up with a percentage. Typically on an efficiency rating, you're going to end up with a percentage. So 10%, 20%, 30% efficient. The new standard that was set by ASSE, it's like an NSF, IATMO, WQA type standard, is standard 1086, ASSE Standard 1086, and it's calling out a 30% efficiency rating. Now, 30% is a major increase and a solid increase. It's raising the bar from where we are today. Some say today we're probably around a 10 to maybe 20 if we're stretching efficiency rating. My guess is we're a lot closer to high single digits of 10% efficient, maybe into the 12s. And that's with a brand new membrane, right out of the box, brand new membrane, you might be hitting 10, 12, maybe if we're lucky, 15% efficient. This standard, 1086, we're looking to get 30% efficient for a year. There's a membrane life test that goes along when you're passing this standard. So you got to get you're trying to recreate a year's worth of life in this membrane, guaranteeing that you're going to maintain at a 30% or better efficiency standard for a year life of the membrane. There's another new player coming into town, and this is WaterSense. WaterSense is a piece of the associated with the EPA. WaterSense is they're not a regulatory branch of any sort. There are a marketing slash awareness group, let's call them, and they partner with manufacturers. They write standards to qualify to meet a WaterSense program. And what they're doing is they're trying to stretch manufacturers and assemblers and sales of products that are water-saving devices. So a toilet that uses less water per flush, an irrigation valve that can deliver water smarter to the crops or to your lawn or whatever you're doing. But they're entering into, and they've been actively aligning and working with stakeholders and water treatment professionals to create a standard that is going to stretch our efficiency standards in residential RO. This is not going to be law. This is not, they don't write law, I should say. They don't write plumbing code or anything like that. It's a recommendation they make. There are partners, mostly in the big box and some other spaces, that require WaterSense products, and you will qualify for green programs and some other things with WaterSense, but that's not really what I'm here to talk about. I'm just here to say that there's a new standard, and now there's a new partner entering the market that are going to push us manufacturers and assemblers and designers of residential reverse osmosis systems to be more efficient. And the rating that they're looking at is 30%. So again, 30% efficiency. So again, that's out of every gallon of water used, 70% of that will be concentrate or waste, and 30% of that will be product or drinking water. So there's some other things there, and I'm going to get back to talking about the membrane life test here in a moment. But so how do we get efficient? How do we get efficient? In my mind, this starts with the element, the membrane you're using. My relations and everything that most of my testing has all been done with FilmTech. It's kind of a gold standard in water treatment. A big partner of myself and Chester Paul Company. So product placement, we're not hiding the fact we are FilmTech, and all of my data and experience is mostly with FilmTech. So that being said, a lot of this comes from the element. These days, although our assembly and design of residential RO hasn't changed since the 80s, you know, the membrane manufacturers have had to change a lot. All of their resources, all of their engineering and new building of sheet, membrane sheet, the raw material that's actually in a membrane, is designed for emerging markets. Emerging markets like China, India, huge populations and horrible water. So if you're a big manufacturer, where are you going to go? You're going to go chase the numbers and build product that's going to work for millions or billions of people, versus where North America, you know, we're sitting here at 300 million. So, and our water is very clean compared to China, India. So the membrane manufacturers have done a lot of the heavy lifting for us. These things are anti-scaling. They can handle all sorts of garbage thrown at them where it just wouldn't have happened in the 80s and even 90s. So they've increased our odds of getting efficient dramatically. And the cost has only gone down. So we're making a better product for less money. That's rare. Excuse me. The next kind of component in your system to look at is a shutoff valve. The typical little hydraulic shutoff valve that's in every RO, the 4-port device that typically is reading incoming line pressure versus tank pressure. And this is a kind of a dummy device that just tells your system when to shut off, so when the tank is full, you're not running all the rest of your water to drain or concentrate. Typically, these are set at, I guess the industry, I shouldn't say typically, the industry default is set at 60 or 2/3 line pressure. So around, let's call it 66%. And that's if you trust the accuracy of a little $3 shut-off valve. These things have springs, and they're reading your feed pressure versus your tank pressure. So at 50 psi feed, you're shutting that tank off once it gets to 33 psi or so. So your tank is quote unquote full at 33%. Well, we can make shutoff valves that shut off at 85+%, 85, 90% line pressure. So in that case, you're shutting that tank, that same tank, you're filling it all the way up to 42, 43 psi versus 33. That's a lot more capacity in your tank. And the kind of dirty secret is when you're fighting against that top end of that tank pressure, you have a lot more resistance. So, the dirty little secret about like flow charts and efficiency standards recovery, when you're looking at this, is when you start to get to the top of the tank's almost full and you're fighting all that head pressure, because now you've squished that diaphragm, you've increased the pressure in the tank. So you're fighting the product water coming into the tank. And that's when you're that's when you're the least efficient. Well, what happens all day? People pull 12 ounces, maybe 16, 14, 8 ounces of water. So you're always fighting that head pressure. So with the further you can fill that tank before shutting off, you are in a little bit of a more efficient state. Now, so how do we get to, let's say, a 50-50 recovery? Well, you're going to set your flow restriction proper to start, right? So when you're testing, you're going to set up, 75 gallon a day, somewhere around 60 to 85 milliliters a minute. Get your recovery around 1 to 1 on your test bench. And then when you get into your efficiency testing, you should land pretty close to 30-35% efficient. There's some trial and error there, obviously. But the life test of the membrane and checking your life of the membrane, people are going to be fearful when you start restricting back because they're going to be fearful of scaling the membrane. So when you start restricting back more than you're used to on your flow restriction on your drain side, people are going to be fearful that they're going to foul the membrane. Well, the way I properly test, and I suggest people test for membrane life testing, is if I start off by making, let's call it a gallon an hour for easy talking. And over the life of that membrane, if I get to 50% my initial flow rate, so half a gallon an hour over a 6-month period, I've basically fouled my membrane prematurely. Now, if that membrane can last over a year or over, let's call it between 700 and 1,000 gallons of product water, with a lot of on-offs on your tank and other cycling, that's kind of simulated a year. If we say 2 to 3 gallons a day for most American households, that's anywhere between 650 to 900 and change gallons a day. So that's what we're looking at when we say a year. So you can speed this test up to about a 20-day, 25-day process to simulate an entire year. So one thing we're always going out and checking TDS to validate the quality of a membrane. Well, if your production has tapered dramatically, 50+%, you're extremely inefficient. So I would always recommend when you're testing membrane quality to look at the product flow rate. And if it's rated at 50 gallons a day, you can scale this test back pretty simple. Then it would be a gallon every 30 minutes. You can break that down into ounces or milliliters, whatever you're using, and judge it accordingly. But that's how we test here. So we're gonna test any membrane that we're gonna test. We're gonna simulate over a 20-day period a life of a membrane and take tests on the product flow rate. All right, to wrap this up in a more concise, quick, easy takeaway, the 80s is out. And we're going to move into the 2020s, and we don't even need AI to do this. We're going to take an efficiency standard 30% efficiency. That's not recovery again. That's an efficiency standard. We've got WaterSense coming into the marketing play. That's going to follow that standard. We're going to use quality membranes. We're going to look at modifying maybe a little bit of our shutoff valves. We're going to be checking product flow rates on membranes and making sure we can do a life test. And let's get educated about efficiency in residential RO. We've been putting out the same product for a long time, and although the contaminant reduction is fantastic, I think we can do the same with the contaminant reduction in a much more efficient way and fall into the 2020s just by raising the bar just a little bit. Won't cost you any more, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to help walk you through this in more detail. Email me at Chester Paul Company, and thank you very much for hanging out and going through a little recovery versus efficiency on residential reverse osmosis. Check out chesterpaul.com. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.